played with Dylan. I mean, opening for him you mentioned before. Did you get to know him?
No, but I got one good Dylan story. Okay, this tour, he's well, I don't know if he does it all the time, but this tour he was into wearing his hoodie. He always had his hoodie on everywhere. This was summertime in Europe, and he's like with his hoodie on, and so I'm sitting there in catering, eating, and he walks over to me and he goes, "Hey, you want to hear a story?" No, sorry, wait a minute. He goes, "Hey, you want to hear a joke?" I'm like, "Yeah." I was kind of freaked out because he hadn't acknowledged my presence at all.
Right.
And he goes, "Okay, there was a royal potato family. You had King Potato, Queen Potato, and Princess Potato. And Princess Potato wanted to get married to Dan Rather. And so she walked over to King Potato and asked him, 'Father, I want to get married to Dan Rather.' And King Potato said, 'You can't get married to Dan Rather. He's a commentator.' And then he goes, and he just left. And then the other experience with him is he invited the whole band into his dressing room and played us a Christmas medley, like in the middle of summertime in Europe. It's just like, we're just sitting there and he's like, jingle bells, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Just totally straight face.
You were invited in.
His assistant was like, "Hey, Bob wants you to come into his dressing room." And so, it was a big deal. Everybody had to get rounded up. We're all in his dressing room, and he's like, jingle bells, jingle bells.
No, thank you for coming.
And he did the whole thing, and he ended it, and he's like, "Heh." And we're just like, "Thanks, Bob."
That's beautiful. That's
yeah, you kind of expect him to do that.
You've played with a wide variety of artists, from, like I said, Leon Russell to Delbert McClinton and the Dixie Chicks, and played on Dylan's, Time Out of Mind. So where does the Bob Dylan album, Time Out of Mind, come in?
When it was, I can't tell you. It was late 90s.
Okay.
It's hell getting old. You miss all your memories.
So, but how did you end up getting called? So did Dylan call you himself, or like management, or how'd you get called to play on a Dylan album?
I was playing again at 12th and Porter, playing, I think, with Joe Nell. I look out in the audience and there's Bob Dylan. And Bucky Baxter, who I've known Bucky for years.
Pedal
Steel.
Yeah.
I think Bucky was there. Tony Garnier, his bass player. And we played a set, and I smoked cigarettes at the time, and I went outside and stood on the sidewalk and was having a cigarette, and there was a few Harleys parked there, and I'm just standing there looking at them, and Bob walks up and introduces himself.
That's a little surreal.
Yeah.
And Dylan.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just say, "Hey, I'm Bob. I really like your playing." And we talked for a few minutes, and he was playing at T-Pack, and invited me out, and
to come see the show.
Yeah.
So
I went, saw the show, and was standing on the side of the stage. And after the show, he came, walked right over to me, and we talked a little bit more. And then it was like 2 years later, I got a call. "Bob wants you to come and play on this record." Well, now, actually, I went out, I got another call before the record, I guess, to fly out to L.A. to play with them at Center Staging. It's like SIR's rehearsal. I guess to see if maybe I would fit in his road band.
Okay.
Played, I think, a couple of days with him, and it was, surreal. At the time, he was playing guitar. Mm-hmm. And he played, the way he plays guitar is you know, he's not playing. He doesn't really play rhythm. He plays these little lines and things, and he's just telling me, you know, I'm not soloing. I'm playing. These are just little things, and you need just see if you can play around them. And anyway, I didn't. Obviously, I didn't tour with him. So, but you know, and I played acoustic guitar on some of that stuff, and I guess he really was impressed with my acoustic playing.
Okay.
Because when I got the call to go to Miami and do that record, I loaded up a trunk full of stuff and amps and got there, and Daniel Lanois was like, "What's all this?" I said, "Well, it's my gear." He said, "Oh, I thought you were just playing acoustic." He said, "Yeah, Bob told me you're the best acoustic player he'd ever heard." And but I didn't know, you know, any of that. And I did play acoustic on some of that record, but I played mostly electric. But yeah, that whole thing about weaving around what he's playing, I guess I never figured that out.
Yeah.
The guy who plays with him, played with him for years, New York guy, also plays fiddle and mandolin.
Larry Campbell.
Larry Campbell.
Yeah.
He's the best guy I ever saw with Bob doing that. I don't know how he figured that out, but Larry's a phenomenal guy. Bob was great at going out and doing things, and the engineer, Mark Howard, was phenomenal. And some of the, you know, most of it was written there in the studio. Bob had a spot in the back corner, and he'd sit back there and write, and we'd wait, and then we'd play something, and then I don't know, then he'd go back and write some more.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was one song that went from this to this to this, you know, started out in E and ended up in B flat, and totally different
Changed
groove,
feel and
everything.
everything.
Yeah. It was a pretty amazing process to watch.